don't think that humans are meant to have a sense of what's going on all around the world at any given moment in time. And I think that that creates a really overwhelming burden or sense of like, oh shit, the world's going to hell, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that can make our problems amplified, or it could make us feel that we are insignificant in certain ways, and might make you feel just even more and more isolated or alone when you're hearing about things that are going on all around the world, but you have your own problems here. And
All right. Well, everybody, this is Reuben Hardern. Is that how you say it? Hardern?
yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. My guy is from Canada, Vancouver area, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
Basically.
he hosts the On Your Mental podcast. And I reached out to Reuben because when I'm trying to find guests for my podcast, I happen to come across your guys's. I think it was your TikTok page or Instagram page,
Mm,
one or the other. That's kind of how I find my guests, and I love how you guys are talking about men's mental health, and which I think is super important, and very, very. It could be very touchy, I guess, to talk about, and you know, people have different feelings on it, but yeah, let's talk about. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your podcast?
yeah. Yeah. For sure, man. First, like, thanks for having me on and giving me a chance to talk about my stuff. Um, yeah. The podcast had started, I guess, just about a year and a half ish ago. It was January 2021. Um, I think that was when the first episode came out. But yeah, I started the podcast out of like a need to be doing something more than what I was just doing with work. Um, I was feeling like my day to day throughout the pandemic felt just very repetitive, and that I was kind of in this routine that I didn't like that much, and my job had changed a little bit. It's a customer facing job,
Mm-hmm.
and so the way that I was used to like conducting my work day to day was no longer feeling as fulfilling, because it kind of felt like we were just vending machines, like people in and out. I had like lineups where I worked, like that kind of thing. So um, that didn't feel great, and I had always thought like maybe I want to do a podcast or something like that, and never had an idea. And then one day the name On Your Mental came to mind before anything else, and then I thought like, oh, I wonder what that could work with, and
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about like mental health. Um, for myself and for my friends, mental health has been a pretty like key part of our, I guess, development in our most pivotal kind of formative years. You know, I'm 26 right now, and it was about 6 years ago where it started to become very prevalent in our lives. Um, and made you like it forced us to think. There was something that had happened. A friend had committed suicide, and so we had, after that, kind of been faced with the reality of like what mental health looks like. That year I started to raise money for Movember, because I thought that was just some way I could do a little bit of my own part, to raise funds and awareness for people struggling with mental health. And um, yeah, fast forward 6 years, our friends still talk about the important things in life, and now we have this platform with On Your Mental to really dive into these kinds of things a bit more, and create an open space, because I think that's where men in particular do lack uh, in the mental health world, is having an open space between each other to come and talk and share what's actually going on in our minds, without fear of judgment or ridicule, and making yourself feel as though you're less than for having problems. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
that's the aim of the podcast, is to, for our audience and the people who are coming on the podcast with guests, and then myself as a host and Kabir as a co-host, all of us just want to come away from each episode feeling better about how we can be open in our lives with other people regarding mental health. Because I think that's the first step. When people don't see it as a taboo subject, as something to sort of like dance around,
Hmm.
makes it easier to talk about and makes it feel more commonplace, and it gets more accepted at that point.
Yeah, well, good. I want to get into mental health in just a second, but just on the podcast journey itself,
Mm-hmm.
did you have experience in like creating or because podcast is still fairly new, and even like video production and editing and
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff that goes into being a creator, um, it takes a little bit of time to learn, and even just be decent at it. Did you have experience prior or?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
It was my first time doing any of that stuff, and admittedly, I didn't go into it blind. You know what I mean? I had
Mm,
friends who have been in the YouTube space for a little while.
okay.
A couple brothers, actually, Jesse Beavis and Brandon Beavis, both have their own YouTube channel. Jesse's is Jesse's Barbershop.
Mm,
Brandon Beavis is Brandon Beavis Investing, and he's started a business from that, the Investing Academy. And uh, I talked to Jesse because Jesse's like close to my age, and I'm like closer with him, I guess. And
mm-hmm.
he was actually my barber. He was always cutting my hair. So
Oh,
when I
okay.
talked to him about all my stresses and woes at work, you know what I mean? Like you go to a barber and it's your therapist sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So I tell him all the shit that I was dealing with and just feeling kind of down with work. And then when it hit that point where I started to look for more and
Mm-hmm.
decided that I wanted to do this podcast, then I would ask him questions about it because he had some idea of how to set up lighting and cameras and all that kind of
Mm,
stuff. And he actually he let me use my first camera for the podcast. And he was my first guest on the podcast too. Um, but getting that all set up, like learning about lighting and just framing a shot,
yeah.
syncing audio, doing all that kind of stuff, understanding how to set up audio because I had no idea what an interface was or anything like that. It was all very new to me, but I had people who have done something in that space that kind of lended a hand and just got me started. But since then, everything's all been self-taught, and many improvements that have been made on the podcast. Because definitely, if you look at like my first season of content, and season, and I'd use just like an arbitrary name, it's just like a way to divide up breaks for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if I looked at like my first episodes compared to what I'm putting out now, it looks drastically different and sounds a lot better too. So I've been spending a lot of time trying to make it better. But right now, where I'm at with the podcast is it's just a creative space, and I'm back to, or at least feel like I'm back to a place where I really enjoy just like doing them. It was feeling a little bit tedious when I was doing one a week, and I've gone
Mm-hmm.
down to one every 2 weeks, and that feels a lot more manageable for me and
Mm-hmm.
works with the rest of my life right now. Especially going through the summer, like people are doing other things. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
want to have time to enjoy the rest of our lives. My co-host is in Bali right now with
Oh,
some other
nice.
friends, so it's like he can go on vacation. You know what I mean? I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
filling time slots without him because
Yeah.
we do every 2 weeks. But it's become more manageable. But there have been periods of time throughout the whole process
Mm,
where it was more difficult because I was trying to put out a certain amount of content that I was satisfied with. And then of course trying to improve it week to week also is draining, right? But it's
it
gone to a good
is.
place now. It just feels like a part of my life, and it's just something I do now.
Now you've been at it for about a year or two.
Year and a half. Yeah, it'll be 2 years in January. So
Okay.
so a year and a
Okay.
bit. Mm.
Awesome. Yeah, because I was looking at your YouTube channel and I saw that you guys had about a little over 2K, right? Subscribers,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is to me is like in a year and a half. I think that's great. You know what I mean?
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you like consistently post or like what were I guess some tips for you
Mm.
to grow it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with anybody who's making content, the thing that I would see everywhere was like consistency is really important. Um, if you I think that a good indicator of if you're doing something that's worth putting more and more effort into is if you're getting good feedback. If people are telling you, "Hey, this is great," then if you introduce or like make it more consistent, that you're constantly bringing out more of that same great content, more and more people will just find it. You know what I mean? I don't have a budget for marketing. You know what I mean? Like I don't pay for sponsored clips on TikTok or anything like that, or Reels
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I don't pay for anything at this point. So it's all just been like word of mouth and people like happening to find it through clips. Like clips were really useful. Most of the growth, like there was one spike after a video I did with my friend Megan, and we were talking about like financial dynamics between men and women and how that's kind of evolving and changing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first clip that I had that like really took off on TikTok, and that led to like a pretty big spike in subscribers on YouTube. And then ever since then, it's been like a gradual increase.
Mm-hmm.
But there are weeks, and this week, or these 2 weeks rather, are weeks where there's very little growth, and it's all when I don't post stuff on TikTok. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
piece of like content creation that's a little bit I find it frustrating, but only when I put like value in seeing the growth in the podcast, which is that you have to keep putting something out.
Mm,
I
yeah.
have to put out clips in order to see it grow at like a significant or noticeable rate.
Mm-hmm.
These last 2 weeks, I've only put out one clip in the last week from my most recent episode, and a part of me feels bad because it's like this is a friend that came on. You know what I mean? It's like I
Yeah.
want your stuff to get out there,
uh,
but I've been busy with some other things this week in my real life,
mm-hmm.
and so those have taken priority for me rather than sitting there and cutting TikToks, adding
Yeah.
captions, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is one, I guess that's the curse of like content creation. You know, consistency is really important in order to see growth. But first you need to have like a solid idea going. You know, you got to
Mm-hmm.
have decent content, and then be consistent with that. But even decent content where you're inconsistent, you won't see growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so both pieces are important. Have a good idea first, and if you're getting good feedback on it, that's how you know it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, just be consistent with it. Don't like get hung up on when things aren't growing at a certain rate for you. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram, Reels, like all that stuff is a bit of a trap. You know, it makes you feel like you got to get it out
It
at a
certainly
certain rate.
does. It certainly
Hmm.
does. That's one thing I do find frustrating as well. Is like if you want to see growth, could consistency is definitely one of the key components in that. And like you hear guys like Gary Vee talk about it, where he's like,
Mm.
you gotta post 3 times a day. Like I don't know if I could do 3 times a day,
Fuck that, man.
let
There's
let alone
no
a week.
way.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you're in the content creating space, you know how time consuming just creating a 1 minute clip takes. You know what I mean? Like for
Hmm.
me, I put out there's 2 clips for me that went viral, but I mean I won't even say viral. That just got up.
Viral by our own standards. You know what I'm
Yeah, by
saying?
your own standards. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. To me, like there's one that got like 15,000 views and like 600 likes on Instagram, and the other one got like 12,000
Hmm.
views and like 500 likes. And to me, compared to the other videos, that's like, oh, okay, these had some traction on it, so I can find
Hmm.
components of those 2 videos and continue to add it to the other clips that I put out. But like those clips took like 3 hours to make, and they're like a minute long. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so it's just like,
Hmm.
dang, it's like, um, and you hope when you put out clips like that they convert to like subscribers or followers or,
Hmm.
you know what I mean, or comments and likes on the actual videos when you put them on
Hmm.
YouTube. And so, but yeah, man, content creating is definitely one of those things where like you need to set time aside and you just got to be ready to sit for a few hours to knock out
Yeah.
a couple clips or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's
Hmm. And
fun,
you'll get clips too where you think like, man, I really hope this one does well,
Hmm.
and then it doesn't, and you're like,
Yeah.
ah, fuck, like what did I put all this effort into? And that I found myself happening a few times, and I try to catch myself when that happens now, where it's
Yeah.
like, don't expect anything out of a clip. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like all these things, TikTok, Instagram, they're random as hell, man. Like
It
I
is.
can't find the things that make it work. You know?
Yeah. Do you do all your editing or do you have help?
Yeah, it's all me. And I don't like I have my co-host for the podcast, right, Kabir,
Hmm.
and he's like one of my best friends. Um, but I don't ask him to do any of that stuff. I don't ask him to learn any of it, right? If he
Hmm.
wanted to, I'd be happy to to show him some of it, but like he'd
Mm-hmm.
need to get his own computer at that point for
Yeah.
editing, right? And like that's not something I'm going to ask of someone for a
Mm-hmm.
passion project like this. Like if this
Yeah.
was making us thousands of dollars in a month, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Then sure, like I'll buy you the laptop, I'll teach
Yeah.
you how to edit, or we'll hire an editor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, at this point, this is just something I like to do, and it was cool
Mm-hmm.
to learn. You know what I mean? Like being able to learn how to edit, like that's given me some stuff that's helped out in other parts of my life too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a good skill to have.
I agree, definitely. And a lot of companies, everything's going digital these days. Everything is
Mm.
digital these days. So learning a skill like this definitely helps in the long run, I feel like. And, but yeah, man, it's wild to know that even at 2,000 subscribers, um, it's not wild, but I think it's interesting to note that you may be doing this for a while before it starts to pay for your lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
But of course, you don't get into it because of that. You know what I mean? I think at the end of the
Hmm.
day, you have to enjoy the process of it and just enjoy it. You know what I mean? I think it comes through
Hmm.
too. You know what I mean? I was watching, watching slash listening to a couple of your episodes. It was the one on, I think it was like friendships and betrayals. You had like four of you on there, I believe.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And then there was one where, is it Kabir?
Kabir, yeah, yeah.
Okay. He was interviewing you, and it was life at 26, which I found interesting because I'm 26 as well. I'll be 27
Mm.
next month. Um,
Happy early birthday, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. This will probably come out around the same time, actually. So it's kind of funny how
Oh,
that worked
sweet.
out. Yeah, because right now I have like a backlog, so everything's like a month out. So this is gonna
Nice.
be
That's
1 month
always
out.
good.
Yeah, but even like doing weekly episodes, bro, like it is, like you said, like I'm even considering going bi-weekly as well because
Yeah.
having to edit the video, and then cut cut the clips for the for social media, and then make sure audio's right and making sure
Hmm.
all that is right. It's hard to do on top of you have a regular job too, right?
I got a regular job,
Yeah.
and then it's hard to do on top of having a regular social life. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I spend time with my partner. I spend time, or I used to spend more time playing games with friends. They haven't been
Mm.
playing in a while, so I have an excuse to not be playing, right? Um, but yeah, it's like you kind of have to sacrifice things if you want to be putting out a podcast once a week. I think
Hmm.
people don't give it enough like credit into the idea that a podcast on paper is simple: record, cut, edit, right? Like you're
Hmm.
done. But they're long,
Yeah.
like yeah, the process is simple, right? But it's
Hmm.
long to go through it and get through start to finish. You're having to sacrifice hanging out, or in my case, it was like I give up nights playing games because I got to edit,
Hmm.
or I can't sit down and watch TV shows or movies with my partner after work because I got to edit
Hmm.
because we went to the gym and now I got to get home. I got to get this done because I got to get a
Hmm.
clip out for whatever day.
Hmm.
And so when I was like really forcing myself to have a clip a day and then an episode once a week, that
Oh my
was
gosh, a
getting to
clip a
be too
day.
much, man. Yeah, yeah, it was getting to be a bit much. So
Hmm.
yeah, I've cut down and I've stopped like telling myself that this needs to grow at a certain rate, and I think that'll keep me enjoying it longer. You
Mm.
know what I mean? If
Yeah.
I'm not sitting there with this pressure on me all the time to do
Yeah.
it, um, then I'll probably do it for longer. And the people that find our podcast and that really enjoy it, like they stick around, and they reach out and say how
Mm.
much it means to them. So that's
Yeah.
the win there. I don't care
Yeah.
if it grows too much.
That's beautiful. And I think that at the end of the day, like you said earlier, like your podcast will find, you know, the right people, and the right people will find your content. You know what I mean? I think that's another thing people should understand about the creator economy is like, I think when people, because I was listening to another video on my drive here, because this is a studio that I rent out, and I was listening to a video and it said how the the title of it was "This is the time to create," and it was pretty much talking about how um, when you are a creator, it really does help with your mental health. And I find that to be true as well, because whenever I'm doing this right here, and whenever I, sit down and edit, and when I press that upload button on YouTube, there's just something that goes off in my brain. I'm just like, oh, this feels this feels great. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
love seeing my little thumbnails on my phone, because that's most of the time that's where I watch my YouTube, is on my phone. And then, but yeah, man, there's just something about creating, and I think I said it in the notes I sent you, was, um, as humans, I think we need this creative outlet. You know what I mean? Was there that same feeling when you started to do your podcast as well, when you were creating? Did you ever feel like that boost in your mood, or did it help your mental
Without a
health?
doubt, man. Yeah. Um, Absolutely. And I don't think that I necessarily expected it. I knew that when I started it, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, that um, when I started it, I knew that it was filling this place, or trying to fill this place where I needed to be doing something that wasn't so routine, and feeling like I was just a vending machine, I think I said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
um, for other people. This gave me a bit more control, and it gave me this creative freedom to do something that I felt was helping other people. Um, so that was huge, and I've talked about this on my podcast too. The first episode that I put out, when it came out and when it actually like was released on YouTube, and I like started sharing it on Instagram, and people went to go check it out, the feedback I was receiving was amazing, man. I put it out, I hit upload, and I left. I left home. I went to the gym. So I was like, fuck this. Like, I don't want to think about this. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
just like be out of my head for a minute and just like go.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to the gym, and I'm like sitting in my car, like, and I just go to check my phone to like see like what's going on, you know? And it's just a bunch of people like saying how sweet this is, and like checking it out. And I sat there in my car before going to the gym, and I cried. It was like a weird emotion.
Really?
It was not a sad cry at all. I've never felt it before. It was just like an
Uh-huh.
overwhelming, like, man, I'm happy, and like people are like showing
That's
love for this.
awesome.
Um, that was weird, man. It was weird in like a really good way.
Yeah.
Um, and ever since, like then I could clearly see like this is gonna be something that's positive for my mental health. And
Mm-hmm.
it just so happens that the podcast talks about mental health stuff, right? So hopefully it's helping other people with theirs, and it has. Like, people have reached out saying different ways that they felt supported by us. But for my own mental health, absolutely, just like
Mm-hmm.
giving me something that um, I have full control over, full autonomy over, and that I see the positive impact of in the world. That feels great for me. And absolutely, even just on like a technical level, like when you hit that upload button, when you are finished your project and I'm done, and I'm at the end of my episode, I've got my outro music like into the timeline, and I'm listening to it, I'm watching it, like, okay, does this sound like a nice way to end? Yep, this is
Mm-hmm.
great. Export done. Like, that's a great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like just seeing your work finished. I guess it's probably the same with anybody who does any kind of creation, whether it's digital or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you put something together, if you build a build a nice bookshelf in your home, you know what I mean? Whatever it's going to be, like there's a piece of you that's very proud at the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels good. It feels good seeing something you've made done, you know?
Absolutely. Um, Veering into the mental health topic, we talked about how creating does help the mental health in some way that I'm sure there's a science behind it that we'd probably have to look up or whatever. But
Hmm.
this day and age, I feel like at 26, now you hear more about mental health being talked about, and how we can take care of our mental health. I like to say, take care of your temple. I'm talking about your mental. You know what I mean? Like your
Hmm.
temple, where your mental is
Hmm.
stored. You know what I mean? And I think it's true, because if this is all healthy, then everything else in your life is going to be great. You know what I mean? It's gonna Everything
Hmm.
will flow seamlessly together, and it's just gonna all work together in a very cohesive way. Um, Outside of creating, your podcast, what are some different ways that you have taken care of your mental health?
For sure. First, I'd like want to say that I definitely agree that it starts here. You know, like your mental health is our foundation because from the beginning of your day, you get up, you're with your thoughts. Even when you're asleep, you are with your thoughts. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter at what point and whatever you're doing in your life, you are the only person truly there with you. You know, you got other people around you, and that's like distractions from time to time. But you got to come home and live with what's in here. So, absolutely, I agree. Mental health is probably the most important piece of your whole wellness. You know, there's all kinds of research that points to. I mean, if you want to take like what's it called, a placebo effect, you know, like a placebo effect of medicine, you know, that comes from your mind telling you that you are feeling better, right? So there is this power in your brain saying that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, outside of the podcast, like the podcast is a great place, and having a creative outlet is good for my mental health. From time to time, I journal. So if I feel as though I'm stressed and feeling maybe a little bit anxious, or that I can't quite articulate to myself and to others like what I've got going on, a journal or a list. I keep a lot of lists on my phone. Journal, I have like a handwritten journal as well. Those help me just get thoughts out and understand them a little bit more. Um, I had a guest on the podcast, Aziza, who's a friend of Kabir's, and she put it really well, which is that like she pointed the fact that with journaling, if you have a million thoughts on your mind and they're all swirling around, you are not able to focus on one. Whereas if you journal or if you speak, only one thought can come out. There aren't other distractions. Like even right now, as I'm speaking, I'm not thinking of other things. I'm just thinking of what I'm saying, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not distracted by whatever stresses I might have in my life. That phone call that I'm waiting for, I haven't thought about as I'm talking. You know what I mean? It's all here and then in the now. And so that's what journaling does for me is it gets thoughts out on paper and lets me focus and hone in on those. And keeping a day-to-day list helps me a lot with managing stress and just like having a to-do list, right? Like makes me feel as though I'm also accomplishing things because when I check those things off, that feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
Physical wellness plays a big role into your mental wellness too. So trying to make time and make an effort to get to the gym is important. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
my outlet is going to the gym. If not, go for a walk. You know, something as simple as that. Getting to spend time speaking with people is really important for me, and I get to do that a lot at work. I prefer to do that with friends,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's just that doesn't happen all the time, right? So it makes it takes an effort, I think, to be improving your mental health and finding what makes you feel better. Not necessarily feel happy. Like happy is like its own conversation, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
just feeling mentally well comes from those things for me. You know, physical wellness, organizing my brain, organizing my thoughts, and then having some kind of social interaction with it, whether it be with friends or random people or on a podcast like this with you, Matt. Like this works for me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, Ruben, I love the way you put it. Journaling is something I definitely do time to time as well. It's I like how you said like when you write, it's like literally only one thought can come out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I do find like after when you journal, it's like you feel like this weight is lifted off your shoulders. You know what I mean? You feel,
Big time.
and it felt like it organizes your mind a lot too. Like you don't have like, because sometimes I feel like my mind is like 1,000 tabs that are open on the internet browser. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, 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 for
Whereas
sure.
when you journal, it's like you just make it down to one tab, and then if you want
Hmm.
to go to another thought, it's like you close that tab and you open another one. And so yeah,
Hmm.
I think journaling is very very powerful, and I feel like you don't have to do it every single day. Maybe if that's you want to start off that way. I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
journaling is definitely one of those things, and daily exercise, kind of like you were saying, I think that's huge. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And even in that sense, it helps you organize your mind as well. And after you get done with it, you're just like, damn, that felt great. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it's not going to hurt to just, walk 10 minutes. Start with 10 and work your way up to 30. You know what I mean? I think
Hmm.
would be definitely beneficial for your mental health. But mental health is definitely one of those things that is being talked a lot about more. Why do you think so many people have struggled with it for all these years? I mean, I think,
Mm,
obviously the generations that came before us, they're more of the, shut up and work kind of mentality, or
hmm.
or
Head
just
down and get through it.
exactly suck it up, nobody cares kind of thing. Um, but I think, even that mindset is beneficial, but sometimes, obviously, with everyone having these mental health, battles and struggles, it's definitely hasn't been the most beneficial. But I want to know your thoughts on, like, why do you think so many of us have struggled with mental health?
Mm. Um, I mean, I have thoughts of as to why so many more people seem to be struggling with mental health. I think that uh, to be fair, like the previous generations, they probably struggled with it too. They just didn't address it, or maybe didn't know it was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
The research and the science behind mental health was very different. If you look at, I think it's the DSM-5 came out in, I want to say like the early 2010s, and that's you might want to fact check me, but it came out the year that I know it came out the year that Movember started to include mental health in their like cause area. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to say it's in the 2000s somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual that is used to diagnose people with mental health conditions, and it's not like fully comprehensive. But if you look at the previous editions before that, there were things that wouldn't be counted or recognized as mental health as they are today, or as mental health issues that are treatable as they are today. If you go back to previous generations, they might look at someone who has like a multiple personality disorder, someone who's just like crazy, right? They'd use these like blanket terms to just like
Mm-hmm.
discount them, like you're just not well, and that's like we don't have an explanation for it, but something's just wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
So first, I do think that the science behind it has gotten so much better, which allows us to understand things and put a name to a face, if you will, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
the face of whatever mental health is, and you have a name for it, and then you can, I guess, just wrap your head around it more. It takes away the unknown. I think what's unique with our generation, the generation just before us too, and then any future generation coming, I think we, of course, are growing up and evolving in this digital world that is way more connected than our parents maybe were and our grandparents were. Like back in the day, you'd have news given to you through a newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear about something that's happened across the country in an instant. Now it's just live and reported on Instagram. News travels fast, but unfortunately, that means that negative news travels fast. And
Mm-hmm.
when you live in a world where you hear about everything that's going on, that can be really overwhelming
Yeah.
to us as, I think personally, us as a species. I want to not like I want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that I'm not a scientist in like the formal sense. I have a bachelor's of science in health science. That doesn't mean that I like know the facts around any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And this is all just personal anecdotes and personal beliefs. But what I do think is through that connectedness, our species isn't meant to be that connected. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that humans are meant to have a sense of what's going on all around the world at any given moment in time. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that creates a really overwhelming burden or sense of like, oh shit, the world's going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And that can make our problems amplified, or it could make us feel that we are insignificant in certain ways, and might make you feel just even more and more isolated or alone when you're hearing about things that are going on all around the world, but you have your own problems here. And I just think that our problems have been exacerbated thanks to social media and
Mm-hmm.
connection. As weird as that might be, um, kids are exposed to new forms of comparison and bullying, making themselves feel as though they are less than, um, just through a screen. You know, that's not real. That's not in
Yeah.
front of you. It's not actually part of your lives. But um, I think more and more now, our younger generations have been just exposed to a world that tells them that they're maybe not good enough, whether that's blatantly or if it's subconsciously thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you develop problems. You develop things like anxiety, you develop depression, bipolar disorders, you develop all kinds of things that
Mm-hmm.
um, are detrimental to your overall well-being. And I think a lot of it comes from the world that we live in, surrounded by technology all the time. If you were to live in a magical world that disconnected everything, and we didn't have podcasts, you know, if there was no internet and you had to just live in the circle of people around you,
Mm-hmm.
you probably wouldn't have the same level or degree of mental health problems that we see in our world today. That's a hypothetical that can't exist. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's not something that's not a reality. So we have to work within our current reality and the space that we're in. And that means learning to treat things and support people with this rather than shun them and put them away. Because if we continue to do that at the scale where we see mental health problems now, we'd be in a hell of a lot worse of a place than
Mm-hmm.
we are. And on the path that we're currently on, as understanding continues to grow around these things, and more outlets are talking openly about it, making people feel as though they can talk openly about it from a younger and younger age. That's when we're going to get to a place where mental health is manageable, because we have to just accept the fact that this is real. It's not something that our grandparents might have just dismissed anymore. You know, this is something that we have to come to terms with, and we have to find a way to make it better.
Mm-hmm. Very well said, Ruben. I definitely agree with you on the fact that social media and the internet and this digital world that we now find ourselves kind of living in. I do agree that it's it can be tough on a kid. I can't imagine what it's like being in high school today. You know what I mean? I have
Mm-hmm.
three younger
Mm-hmm.
brothers, and back then they didn't even allow us to have our phones. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
nowadays, I
keep that
see
stuff
my
away in clouds.
absolutely. And nowadays, everyone's making all these kids are making TikToks at school. You know what I mean? And I feel like man, like how quickly it changed. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
then, but with the age of social media and everyone having instant news at their fingertips,
Mm-hmm.
I do see how it can play into because I fell into the trap of comparison, seeing people on social
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
media, having the things that I would like to have, having the experiences that I would like to have. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely one of those mental health hurdles that I had to, I'm still currently, battling it, but yeah, like you said, man, we have to find a way to support each other and
Mm-hmm.
just make each other better. You know what I mean? Um,
Mm-hmm.
which leads me to this next question: is how can we, as men, in particular, how can we help each other with our mental health? You know what I mean? Because I feel like it could be very taboo in some circles of men. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where at least this is just my own perspective, and
Mm-hmm.
from my own experiences. I feel like when you do bring up the topic of, oh, I'm struggling with this, or I have this going on, inside my mind or my head, you may get that label that you're crazy, or you may get that label that, oh, you're weak. You know what I mean?
You're being soft. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And and even those things don't help. You know what I mean? Which can make it even
Mm-hmm.
worse. But
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know: have you experienced that same experience, or
Mm.
you know what I mean?
I mean, to some degree, um, I've been lucky not to be met with very much resistance when talking about things that have bothered me. Right, my friends were often very good listeners. Right, of course, you'll be met with things sometimes like, "Oh, that's not that bad," like being told that it's not that bad. And I think that's a skill that as men we should practice within our circles of men that matter to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't dismiss anything. Don't try to fix the problem. I think that's something that men do a lot is
Mm-hmm.
try and fix the problem, tell you what your solution is going to be. Um, Trying to avoid that and just be a good ear, I think, is really important, and I think it goes a long way. Let somebody be heard, and I guess the only accountability you can have is yourself, right? You can't control how other people are going to act or react to any kind of conversation, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you want to talk about things that are weighing on you and affecting your mental health, and you want to have an open space with your friends, like hope that your friends are going to be receptive to that, but be prepared for them not to be, right?
Mm.
I think that there is a piece of relentless consistency, and I mean, we've talked about consistency with content creation, but consistency with being open with your friends, because it's an adjustment period. You know, there when people aren't used to talking about mental health openly, to then suddenly start doing it, it can be a lot. And if they are used to dismissing these kinds of things,
Mm-hmm.
don't hold it against them if they do, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they might, right? They might tell you that you're being too weak around this thing, or you shouldn't let this thing get to you.
Mm-hmm.
Come back with the next thing, you know, and try and continue to create a space where it's okay to do this. And I think that that's what happened with our friends. Is I just so often talked about things that were on my mind, all the
Mm-hmm.
way since high school, and um, was just constantly sharing. I think that I was uh, able to pick that up through my mom, right? I'm a single or only child, and my mom's a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just the two of us, and it created a space where communication had to be good,
Mm-hmm.
had to welcome open communication in the home. Because if we didn't, then like things were just going to crash and burn for me as a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, so I think I learned that from her, and I unconsciously brought that into my friend circles. And in reflection, creating this podcast and looking back on it, like I brought that in there, right? And I've made my friends, I think, more open. They've said that I've kind of pushed them to this point, you know, where
Mm-hmm.
now it is normal for everybody in our friend group to talk that way. But I think our responsibility, to answer my question a bit more pointedly, our responsibility as men is to lead by example, and you can only change your behavior. You cannot change other people's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is about humans is that we'll copy, we'll mimic, we'll want to fit in. The more you see people doing it, the more other people are going to do it. That's
Mm-hmm.
the same reason why kids today are sucked into this trap with social media, is because we want to fit in. And if fitting in looks like making a TikTok at school, everybody's going to make a TikTok at school.
Right.
If fitting in looks like talking about your mental health and saying when you aren't doing well, being able to articulate what's going on in your mind, and not necessarily asking for help, but just saying, this is what's happening with me right now. If that's common and people see that everywhere, everyone will do it. So I think that's our responsibility. For the men that are comfortable with doing it now, do it more often.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that will continue to rub off slowly but surely on any other friends that spend time around you, friends, family, whoever. Uh, just lead by example. Be open when it's uncomfortable too, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll eventually see the benefits of it if you don't immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
Yeah. As you were talking, I had the thought come to my mind of, you mentioned consistency. If you keep showing up in a vulnerable and open way, I agree. Yeah. It's going to be one of those things that, it's kind of like content creating, where the more you do it, it's going to attract a certain person, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
attract the right friends. Um, and then, yeah, very beautifully put, Ruben, and I totally agree with you on that. The more we keep doing it, the more it becomes just second nature, just to share,
Yeah.
what's on our mind. And, then it allows you to, not go through it alone. You know what I mean? It allows you to bring someone in to help you on that journey of whatever it is that you may be struggling with at that time. So thanks for that input right there. Um,
Mm.
you know, staying on this emotional, you know, explaining what's going on with our emotions. Um, I think it is very challenging for men to kind of share what they're going through emotionally. There was a clip that you guys put out on emotional wellness, and I think I forget, the person you had on, but they said emotional wellness is being able to handle and recognize your emotions. You know,
Hmm.
and I think that's key. You know what I mean? Uh, Being able to recognize and handle your emotions. Is there a way for us to, I guess, express our emotions without like dumping it onto somebody? You know what I mean? Or have you
Mm.
ever heard of that? Like just emotionally vomiting on somebody?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Because and it can be really hard to do when you are feeling whatever emotion, and like you're driven by that emotion. That emotion is pretty hard to hide, right? A lot of the time, and the difficulty with that is when you are wanting to talk about it, when this emotion involves another person, um, or if you are going to share this emotion with someone else and say like, this is how I'm feeling right now. If you let that emotion drive the conversation, and it's not uh, a friendly emotion, maybe it's anger, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's frustration, jealousy, like whatever it might be, and you need to articulate that thing. Um, but all that's coming across is that emotion, that can feel like a bit of an attack to the other
Mm-hmm.
person. I'm sure that you've felt that. I felt that, like when people come to me and like you can clearly just tell that they're just like mad or something like that. Now all I'm focused on is the fact that you're angry. I'm not focused on the words that you're saying. I'm focused on like,
Yeah,
oh shit, like you're just pissed.
yeah.
And to avoid that, like you have to know how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Dennis had come on the podcast recently, and he talked about learning to identify yourself with the observer of your emotions rather than the emotions themselves. And that was like a weird concept to wrap my head around at first in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And like listening back to it, I was able to understand it better, and I think start to get an okay grasp on what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think to yourself in moments where I'm frustrated that something happened, rather than thinking I'm frustrated, start to kind of see yourself as the person observing the fact that you're frustrated. It's like this second, like out of body kind of look
Mm-hmm.
at yourself and your emotion. And that's when you'll start to realize that you are not those emotions. You are not
Mm-hmm.
the angry person. You're not the sad person. You are someone who is feeling those things right now. It comes back to what he was talking about, the whole classic cliche saying, or however you want to say it, which is that this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
But both from the negatives and the positives in life, whatever feeling you have, and that the person you are that's feeling this stuff, that's going to pass, because you are not those things. You are you, and you continue on in life. Um, when you can start to see your emotion that way, and start to process it, reflect on it a bit more, I think that makes it easier to communicate it to other people. I think it's impossible to communicate emotion immediately, because it takes a moment to reflect and understand why you are feeling that way. And if you start to have a conversation with someone about, let's say, feeling depressed, but it's just like as you've started to feel it, like you've been good all week, and now this is day one where now you're noticing, hey, I'm not feeling great, but you still don't know what it is. You don't know what's maybe changed. That
Mm-hmm.
becomes really hard to articulate, and becomes really hard to put on someone.
Yeah.
So it just takes practice. I think it takes practice to get to a place where you can understand when you're starting to feel something, and you start to know what your kind of emotional triggers are to how
Mm-hmm.
you might be swayed off of your typical self. But know that these things are going to pass, and that lets you take the emotion out of it. I think when you aren't having a conversation led with emotion, it makes it easier for everybody to, I guess, accept it and understand it and be part of a conversation, rather than having someone emotionally vomit or they're emotionally dump on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it is just um, you really have to come. I think you have to embrace it as well. You know what I mean? Just accept it. I think acceptance is it goes along with recognizing that emotion. Like, oh, I'm feeling this right now. Okay, and
Hmm.
not to judge
And
yourself
that it's
for it.
okay to feel that way. Yeah, like
Exactly,
whatever way you
exactly.
feel is valid. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's huge because sometimes, I've even found myself feeling like, oh, why do I feel this way right now? Like I shouldn't be feeling this way right
Hmm.
now. You know what I mean? And then you start to kind of judge yourself, and then and then
Hmm.
you start spiraling down a little bit more than where
Hmm.
you were previously. But
But it's
yeah,
okay to feel that thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely um, a skill. I think it's a skill. You know what I mean? Because it takes practice, and it's something that you can
Hmm.
learn. You know what I mean? I think people need to realize that, like because emotions can be very overwhelming. And
Hmm.
emotions they're this energy that you get. When you're mad, you feel very like you just feel this sense of energy, like you want to just punch something. You
Feel
know what I mean?
tense. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when you're happy as well, you feel this joy, and you want to just keep on. You're kind of more, I guess, present when you're happy and you're joyful. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And there's this energy just to kind of stay in the moment. And so, but yeah, energy comes and goes. Emotions come and go, and I think at the end of the day, you gotta recognize it and embrace it. And like you said, just kind of
Hmm.
practice recognizing it, and then because I had this at my job, there's a period where I was very, I don't, initially I didn't recognize what I was going through, but I was just having a tough time with my life at that moment, and and I couldn't really like when people would ask me, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" I didn't know. Genuinely, I didn't know, but
Hmm.
I knew that I was like wasn't well. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I didn't want to make up a lie or anything. I was like, you know what, I'm just not well right now. Um, when I figure it out, I'll let you know, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
sure enough, I did. I
Hmm.
let it pass, and then I was able to come to this person. I was like, hey, like I have the tendency to be hyper vigilant. And I feel like the whole world's against me, kind of thing. And I was able to explain, what I was going through, and and they were able to respect that, and they were able to
Hmm.
understand what I was going through. And so next time when that does happen, they can recognize, oh, he's just kind of going through a tough time right now. And so
Right.
yeah, I think you have to embrace it though, and just continue to kind of I like to say write it out. Write it out, and
Mm.
then just when it passes, reflect and analyze what went wrong, and
Hmm.
just kind of it's like taking a loss. Like when you're playing a game and when you lose, it's like the same thing with emotions. When it passes, go watch film,
Hmm.
and then come
Hmm.
back and
Hmm.
make that adjustment. You know what I mean?
Because there's lessons in it, right? Like you're not able to adjust your response to your emotions unless you reflect. Because if you just deal with, here's my emotion, this is my reaction to it, and then the next time it comes up, you just go through that same play, that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional intelligence is such a real thing, and that's why like you'll look at a newborn, and a newborn cannot express emotion in any way other than laughing or crying. Like that's
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
That's their way of expressing it. As we get older and we mature and we understand ourselves more and more, we find new ways to express emotion that work
mm-hmm.
for the real world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see it in. I think that men who are not given the opportunity to express themselves openly like this
Mm-hmm.
don't develop much emotional intelligence, and then they often find themselves, they're the ones who are shouting in a room, they're the ones who are complaining at a desk in front of a customer service space. You know what I mean? They're the
Mm-hmm.
ones who are yelling at someone who's done nothing wrong. They're the people
Yeah.
making a scene in places. They're the people getting into altercations at some concert. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Those people haven't learned the emotional intelligence or like developed the emotional intelligence
Mm-hmm.
to recognize who they are, why they're feeling a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and not let their emotions drive them. I think that without having that space, that's why you have men that can be like that sometimes. That can
Mm-hmm.
be almost difficult to be around. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody can get there. It's just a matter of time.
Absolutely, and I agree. Um, what I forgot what I was going to ask you.
It's all good.
It must have not been that important. Dang it! I felt like it was though. Oh my gosh. Anyways,
Was it when you were talking about your job and when you had uh,
I
that
remember
person
now.
who you talked to? Yeah.
I remember now. I was going to ask, like, what have you done to, I guess, equip yourself with just different tools? Because sometimes I meditate, to kind of center me and ground me and just to kind of clear my mind. So I meditate, and obviously I work out. But I know there's different resources out there, like books and maybe podcasts, like on your mental. um,
Mm-hmm.
have you come across like any like game changing or life changing resources that maybe you can share with whoever's listening that has helped you with,
Sure.
emotional intelligence, well being, or just overall health? You know what I mean?
Hmm. Man, that's a good question. When I think about the tools that I've learned stuff from, they've unfortunately been like personal
Mm-hmm.
lessons, and what I mean by that is like I've learned a lot from my counselors. And obviously, like my counselor is not going to be accessible to everybody who's listening and watching. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've learned a lot from certain guests on my podcast. If you had to go and look at some episodes, sorry to plug away from your podcast here for two
No, you're
seconds, but
good.
any episode that's had Jeff Yu in it. So if you just looked up on your mental Jeff Yu,
Mm-hmm.
his episodes were great at getting me to understand certain aspects in life, and hope to have many more conversations with him. Um, I would say for me in my life, music has been like a major
Mm-hmm.
factor and a major spot to learn lessons, I guess. Growing up without a dad, I don't have somebody to give me dad lessons on what it means to be a man and to carry yourself as a man throughout the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so for me, I've found a lot of artists that stand out as people who have taught me lessons about being yourself. Behind me, you got Frank Ocean here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I spend a lot of time like listening really like I guess intently to music. I pay a lot of attention to lyrics and try and draw meaning from them. J. Cole does that a lot for me too. Kendrick's latest album was like huge to listen to and gives you some real like thinking points to improve yourself. And I think that to answer your question directly, what's important and what's worked for me is when I hear something that works, think about it more than once. Think about it
Mm-hmm.
again. Don't just think like, oh, that was cool, and never come back to it. Never
Yeah.
reflect on it. I think reflection is so important, not just in yourself internally with your own emotions, but I think it's important when you hear new things or hear about new skills or new ways to approach problems internally. I think it's important to think about those things more than once. So pause and I guess like recognize when you found something that could be good and revisit. That would be the way to gain new tools.
Yeah.
And for example, when I think about stuff I've learned from my counselor, I learned to journal by recommendation from my counselor. I didn't know how to approach it and just thought like journaling meant I had to write like paragraphs out about certain things, but my counselor showed me that like you just have to get pen on paper and stuff will start to flow, right? And
Mm-hmm.
learning that and revisiting it and actually practicing it, that's made it now part of my like my ritual, if you will, of maintaining good mental health. Is when it starts to go downward, bring out that journal. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
gets you right back up.
Yeah, I also hear the theme in your, you kind of said it earlier in your response, but the theme of just relationship, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You said your counselor, and you said, people in your circle, have, you've been able to learn from and take things from. I think that's also important for people to realize, like, it's a lesson that I'm learning. This is what I'm telling myself as well. Like, the people in your life are there to teach you things. I'm a big
Mm-hmm.
believer. I'm a big believer in that you can learn anything from anybody. You know what I mean? You
Mm-hmm.
could be the homeless man on the street, or that 5-year old that you kind of see in the grocery store. You know what I mean? I think
Hmm.
you could take a little bit of something from everybody and apply it to your life. And yeah, I think the big key is just to really invest into your relationships. You know what I mean? And it sounds like that's something you do heavily. You know, on your podcast, if you go, if anyone who's listening or watching, if you go check out Reuben's podcast, him and his friends, they just have a good time. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it was so cool for me to see is like um, when I was watching that one podcast when you guys were talking about friends, and it
Hmm.
was it brought me joy because it was just those it was just it synced so well together. It was very flowy, and it was just um, you can tell from the outside looking in that the relationship there between all of you is one that was authentic, and one that was you know you could tell there was care for each other there, and you could tell that
Hmm.
um, not only care but also you're invested into each other's growth. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the
Hmm.
huge um, benefits, to having a really, really great friendship. And it's also a privilege. If you have friendships where people are trying to help you grow and succeed and get better, it's a privilege. You know what I mean? I think,
Hmm.
and you'd be a fool to not lean into that and embrace all that friendship is going to bring you. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so
For
I
sure.
think that's huge. Relationships are huge to your growth and your mental well-being. Have you ever found yourself in a place where you weren't necessarily in an environment that honored or gave you the space to grow, and it kind of capped you?
Hmm. Um, Not directly,
Mm.
uh, but in a way, like I did learn a lesson within the last 2 years, um, thinking about not being like given the space to grow. Um, at a personal level, like all my friends, family, relationships, those have never hindered my growth in any way, and never stopped me or disallowed me from being who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I learned this lesson uh, through a job, and the lesson was don't allow other people to dictate what you want to do. Don't let someone else tell you what they think is good for you, and then follow through with that thing
Mm-hmm.
if you don't think that it's true. um, I think if there's like there's pros and cons to listening to other people and to taking guidance and recommendation. I think do that to an extent, and it's something that I've done and seen a lot of like benefit in doing in my life is learning from other people. But if people are telling you, "Hey, I think this is going to be good for you," wonder why first, and then ask yourself, "Is it really going to be good for me? And is it something that I even want?"
Mm-hmm.
If there are things that are asked of you or recommended to you to do, question those things. If it didn't come from your own mind first, if it wasn't your idea, because those things may sometimes put you in positions where you are no longer able to do your best and be your best self. I think that that's something that I've just encountered through work, which is that I ended up in a role that I don't excel in, coming from a space that I really did enjoy. And the thing that I bought into was that this is going to be great for you. You're going to get a lot of perspective here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sure, maybe, but it left me unhappy for a period of time. Um, so I think, yeah, I haven't run into any stoppers on a personal level, but I have run into stoppers for growth at like a professional level.
Mm-hmm.
So it might not be the answer that you're looking for, but um, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Is do what you think is right for you, even if recommendation from other people comes in. Think about it first. Think about if it's something that you really want, and that can apply to, I think, things around learning how to better manage your mental health. If you hear about a skill, someone says, "Hey, go try journaling." If it's really not something that you want to try, if you've thought about it before, if you've like given it a go and it's not
Mm-hmm.
something you want to do, don't do it, right? Like some things don't work for everybody, right? But I think that that hit me in the last 2 years was I ended up doing things that someone else thought was going to be good for me. I had a sense that it wasn't going to be good for me, but I tried it anyways, and
Hmm.
I'm not out of it. So, yeah.
Well, I do respect the answer, and no, it was a response that I think was necessary, because there's a lesson in that. You said, do what you believe is right for you, if I heard that correctly, and
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's huge. A lot of times you're gonna get a lot of input from all over the place, and it's you at the end of the day that has to make that decision whether or not to follow through with advice that people may be trying to give you. And so, but yeah, no, that's huge, bro. And it's one of those lessons I think everyone has to learn. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but as we kind of wrap up here at the end, I ask my guests these questions. Actually, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you. What was a struggle that you what was one of the most challenging things that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome it?
Hmm. Um, I want to give you a good answer, so I'll think for a second here. Hopefully, you can like cut around stuff.
Go for it.
Uh, I think the biggest thing that I had to overcome was at some level like self doubt, um, that you couldn't do more. Um, there was a little bit of a hurdle in wanting to start the podcast, for example. I think that's a pretty big struggle in my life was like getting around the idea that all this isn't going to be good enough. What if people don't like it? How am I going to actually put it together? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the money that it took to like buy equipment, for example? So I think that all boils down to self doubt. I think self doubt is probably the biggest stopper of anybody doing anything new in their life. Is is it going to be worth it? Is it going to work out? And what does that mean to you? Like that's something that you have to first answer too. Like, what do you mean worth it? What do I mean? Is it going to be worth my time? What would
Hmm.
make it worth it?
Yeah.
Um, and what eventually ended up happening was I just cut through all that and just ignored those things, which was hard to do at first, was ignore like the what ifs and just do something that I thought was a good idea. I had to remind myself at points that I thought this was a good idea. I had to remind myself that your friends thought that this was a good idea. So just do it and finish it and follow through with it and see what happens on the other side. You don't know what the result is going to be. And when you live in a world of anxiety and what ifs, that's really what anxiety is being afraid of a future that hasn't happened, right? Or reminding
Hmm.
yourself of a past that is no longer in existence, right? You are
Hmm.
just here, you're just here now. And overcoming self doubt, I think, boils down to that a little bit is just deal with what's in front of you, be in the moment, and that's something that I still work on, of course, time to time, right?
Hmm.
Um, Even in this last week, like in anticipating a particular phone call, you know what I mean, that I'm waiting to hear something about that I want to be positive, right? I've
Hmm.
been, of course, living in this fantasy world that it's the wrong response that I'm waiting for, that I'm
Hmm.
going to be told something I don't want to hear in this phone
Yeah.
call I've been waiting for. But why live in a world like that when you can just be present and be in the moment? I think that helps you overcome some self doubt and just do what you think is right. Do what feels good to you.
Beautiful. Thanks for that response, Ruben. Um, Now on to the big three. All right, you ready for this?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the first question is going to be, what do you define as success?
Mm. For me, when I feel successful or that what I've done, I've succeeded at doing, um, and this is going to sound corny, but I don't care. If I see positive impact in other people, if other people's lives have been improved by being around my own, that's success to me. So when I think about the podcast is already successful because people have benefited from it. They've reached out, they've said this has helped. Cool, podcast has been successful. It doesn't matter if I keep doing it for 10 more years or if I stop tomorrow, right? It's had positive impact. That was a success. I think, admittedly, I've thought about like monetary success for some time. Like I need to make a certain amount of money to feel successful as a young man, and in 2022 as a 26-year-old, like I gotta somehow earn six figures one day, and that's not something I do today, right? But does that make me feel unsuccessful for where I'm at right now? No. I think if you have good people around you, and that's why I say this is going to sound corny and a little bit cliche, but if you have good people around you, if you got a roof over your head, you're successful. You're doing just fine. Help other people, that makes me feel successful. That makes me feel like whatever I'm doing is better.
I don't think it was corny at all. I think it's truth. You know what I mean? Sometimes the simplest, things in life we take for granted, and we don't realize how fortunate we are. You know what I mean? And yeah, relationships. The health of your relationships. That's success. You know what I mean? But yeah, so thanks for that response. And then the next one, Reuben, is what do you define as love?
Man. That's hard because I had this conversation with Jeff Yu, who I mentioned in our conversation today, about his like definition of love, and I think I've adopted a bit of his definition of it. He defined love as his partner's happiness. If his partner is happy, that's love for him. Like seeing his partner happy, regardless of what that meant to his own happiness. That was where he would define love: is that you are sacrificing your own happiness for the other, and that to him was love. I don't think I quite see it that extent because I want to be happy all the time too, or like strive to be. But for me in my life today, I think love comes down to partnership and communication and accountability. I think that's how I see love, both in intimate relationships and just platonic like friendships, and relationships with people that I do love. Like I love all the boys, I love my mom, I love my partner, and for all those people, like it's consistent communication with each other. I feel love in that. And I do see love as just this thing where people are accountable to themselves and to your life. You aren't not there for each other. You're always someone who you can speak to. That's where I see love and see and feel love, is when people are there and they're present, accounted for.
Yeah, that's a very unique response. I love it. Then the last one's going to be, what do you think the purpose is to life?
Purpose is easy. Keep the species alive. Procreate, have a kid.
I love
it. That's the that's the purpose. Meaning is going to be different, right? And meaning is going to be so subjective. And we as a human race, unfortunately, have a consciousness that tells us that we need to derive meaning from this purpose in life. But it's more than just procreating and keeping the species alive, and it is. I think that our generation, it's funny, I was having a talk last night with my partner and my mom. We had gone out to dinner with the three of us, and my mom asked a question to the two of us, like, what do we think our generation's, I guess, goal would be for the world? I think if there is a purpose or a meaning that our generation could adopt, is to try and leave the world in a good place for the next, and I think that's ultimately probably what every generation has tried to do in one way or another, but overcome the challenges that are facing the world today. We've got an environment that is on its way out the door. Like we are doing such terrible things for our planet, and I can't say that I do anything extraordinary or anything better for the world
Hmm.
in my day-to-day life. You know what I mean? I do drive a car. You know, it's a gas vehicle. Like I'm not doing anything different. I've got a bunch of lights on in this room right now. I'm using my fair share of power. You know,
Yeah.
um, we are taking away from finite resources, and that's not great for our generation.
Hmm.
Uh, this is going to like steer me too far down some other path, so I'll simplify it. Our purpose or our meaning, I feel, would be that we need to leave things better for the next generation than we found it. That's it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement right there, and because yeah, it kind of goes along with the purpose to life, to procreate, and I think you are having a part to play in it with your podcast. You know what I mean? I think another thing our generation, and maybe it's because, uh, well, yeah, I think it's a lot of our generation seems to be um, really embracing, like, I guess, creativity and a lot of the creative economy. I feel like, and this is just me just speculating, and I'm not sure the statistic on it, but I feel like a lot of people our age are trying to put out content that makes a positive impact, whether it's
Mhm.
dancing on TikTok or whether it's podcasts like ours. I think a lot of people are trying to make a difference in the world in a good way. And this is kind of a bonus question, but this is one I wanted to ask you earlier. But you know, do you believe like everyone has a purpose?
Mm. Um, yes, as a collective, um, I don't think anything that one person does is more important than the next, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
hard thing to like even say and fully believe in myself. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
you'll see people that are just huge figures
Mm-hmm.
that may have seemingly done so much for so many people, but that doesn't mean that each person around you doesn't have something to contribute
Mm-hmm.
to the greater, I guess, purpose that we just talked about there, and meaning of leaving the world better and like creating a place that's better for the next person. Anyone can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't feel as though you have some sort of purpose already, I mean, for me, the podcast gives me some added purpose. I feel like it's an avenue to accomplish that same goal that I'm talking about, that same meaning and purpose I've said just a moment earlier. But if you feel like you don't have a purpose in the world, I think you're wrong. I would think that to someone listening to this or watching this thinking I don't have something to contribute, that's just simply not true. You
Mm-hmm.
could do something that would help somebody out tomorrow. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
could walk out the door and you could help someone in some way, and they don't have to be grand gestures. Shit, like holding a door open for someone has made that person's day better. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can look at them as small little things. Just being mindful and kind to the rest of the world will get you pretty far. Um, yeah, yeah. Put your own selfish world aside sometimes and do things better for other people.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something I think everyone should believe about themselves, that they do have a part to play. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Whether it's on a big scale, little scale, whatever, it all works together. You know what I mean? I like
Hmm.
to think of it as everything is connected. Therefore, everyone has a part to play. So one little decision, you know, could go a long way, whether you see the impact of it or not. You know what I mean? I think
Hmm.
it's going to continue to ripple, and you'll reap whatever you sow. You know what I mean? And so,
Hmm.
why not reap in a good way where you're intentionally trying to make someone else's life better? You know what I mean? And help
Hmm.
improve the quality of their life. But Reuben, thank you for this conversation, bro, and definitely
Thank you, Matt.
appreciate everything that you shared. What are you working on next?
Right now, I am trying to line up the next podcast, but I'm taking things a little bit slow. I think honestly, I'm probably working on a break coming up, I would
Okay.
imagine. Um, I have some things in my my work life that might be changing, or hopefully will be changing, which will take a bit more dedicated focus and kind of getting used to potentially a new routine.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, by the time this episode is out, that will have happened. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. We'll see. So kind of just needing to focus energy in different places,
Yeah.
and then kind of reassess like where I'm at with the podcast too. Like, what does that look like in my life today? Do I need to put out 7 clips in 2 weeks, which is now what I had aimed to do? Probably not, and
Yeah.
it's just not working for me right now. So, but staying consistent with at least getting an episode out every
Mm-hmm.
couple of weeks, I think is something that I want to do. But maybe pump the brakes on the extracurricular of the content, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then where can people find, I guess, you or your podcast?
Mm. Our podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. YouTube for the video version, Spotify and Apple Podcasts for the audio. And then you can just search up On Your Mental. If you can't find those, you could look up onyourmental.com. We've got a website up that just has kind of a centralized space for that, a little bit about me and Kabir there too. So if you want to read about us first, you can check out onyourmental.com and then see the episodes from there.
Sweet. Thank you, Reuben. Appreciate you, brother. And
For sure.
yeah, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.